but instead a long E. The first word in this book with an umlaut is Schützenmatte. Today this is a large paved space near Bern's train station that's often used as a parking lot. When it first appeared in the city's records in 1477, however, it was a field where men practiced archery with crossbows, a shooting meadow. It's still a stretch of land to be navigated carefully, especially at night, as you're about to find out. 1. Downtown Bern. Sunday, June 16th, early morning. "Let's get out of here," he said. But when he looked round, he was alone. They'd just been talking, hadn't they? Now most of the tables behind him were empty, and a man was mopping the floor. He braced his arms, pushed himself to his feet, swayed, and then lurched through the dim bar and onto the sidewalk. Nearby, a familiar figure stood hunched against the wall. Good. Christ, he was blitzed. How had that happened? Some weed, followed by plenty of beer as they'd talked through the plans. But so what? The shots of schnapps, that had been his mistake. Still, he'd managed everything. Things were set up the way he wanted them. And if he'd messed up somewhere, well, it could be fixed. Later. He heard roars and shrieks, the dancing still going strong. It wasn't often he sold to strangers instead of regulars, but with 10,000 kids dancing through downtown, all working on getting wasted, he'd have been crazy not to unload as much stuff as he could. Selling dope with hundreds of police stomping around. He couldn't believe he'd gotten away with it. The money he'd made, all in one evening. And then getting the whole deal done. He deserved the schnapps. He tried to see the time on his phone, but his eyes refused to focus. Shit, was it 2? 3? People were moving, but there was no beat. Why had the music stopped? Clinging grimly to his companion's arm, he squinted at the plaza in front of the train station. When he'd strolled into the bar a couple of hours before, the square had been full of bodies swaying to the music. Now he saw flares of pulsing light and smelled smoke. Through the haze he made out fires, heard screams, felt his eyes sting with tear gas. Time to walk away. He tugged his friend down the Boulevard to a crosswalk. When the little man turned green, they wove across the street and came to a stop in the Schützenmatte. During the day it was just a parking lot, but at night... Now the enormous riding school complex loomed out of the dark in front of him, lit by meager lamps strung across the courtyard. The bursts of graffiti on the building's walls flickered as the hanging lights swayed. He felt strange. He wasn't alone again, was he? No, he saw a figure leaning against a car. When he beckoned, his friend stumbled closer, scuffing old newspapers and trash like a kid shuffling in dry leaves. As the two of them shambled toward the riding school, slapping feet and panting breaths surged out of the darkness behind them, and at least 20 men barreled by. One almost plowed into him. The man's black hood was tight around his head, his nose and mouth were covered, and there was a thick chain wrapped around his arm, one end gripped in his fist. Others brandished metal bars or broken bottles. Some carried stuff in their arms. Clothes, shoes, a laptop, a toaster. A toaster? They were looting. Guys were actually stealing from shops. He didn't think Bern had ever had a riot like this, where people lit fires and raided stores. It was fucking amazing. But weird, too. The city was out of control. More boots clattering on pavement. Quick. He stumbled back into the shelter of a pillar, and the next wave of runners swept by. This time it was cops, enormous, clear plastic shields held out like battering rams. Stupid to run with those. The looters would be all over the riding school before the pigs even reached the front gates. He giggled at how stupid they looked, with their bulbous helmets bobbing in the half-light and their shields banging against their knees. "Jesus Christ, let's go," said his companion, grabbing his shoulder. That's right. They'd been on their way to the riding school, which didn't seem like such a good idea anymore. As they swerved back on themselves in a jagged circle, he noticed a single cop running toward them, shield held sideways to keep it clear of his legs, desperate to catch up with the others. "Oh no, I'm going to miss my chance to bash the boys in black. Wait for me." The lone cop hadn't seen them standing in the shadows a few feet away. The impulse to leap out and yell "Boo!" filled his head like helium. Then he had a better idea. He stepped out of the darkness as the cop ran by and stuck one leg into his path. The man flew through the air, rocketed to the pavement, and smacked his helmeted head into the bumper of a parked car with a resounding boing.